Okay, looks like we are live, and we are going to go through and do a special 2022 draft today. Y'all know we are usually just getting in regular 12-team drafts where, yeah, you're trying to get first in your 12-team league, but first, second, third get paid, so you don't have to just go for the highest ceiling possible. Well, here instead, we are going to be hopping into a draft room where there is $300,000 in prizes. Now, of course, we're still going to get paid if you get first in your 12-team league, if you get second in your 12-team league. But where the real money is if you can advance through the fantasy football playoffs and have that elite team with the elite level ceiling. And if you are able to make it to the end, there's life-changing money there. So it's a much different draft strategy. I know the majority of y'all are getting into these drafts on Underdog Fantasy because obviously going and drafting for the highest ceiling possible, going and drafting for that life-changing money is pretty fun. So instead of sending out a regular link for y'all to join our private draft in this live stream here, I'm going to go through and I'm going to send a link just for Underdog Fantasy, and I'll show you exactly where you can get in, because of course I'm sure that y'all know this by now on Underdog Fantasy. If y'all want to go get in basketball drafts with public lobby, you can do that. If you want to go get into just a regular 2022 fantasy football draft, you can go do that and go get into some hockey drafts, some basketball, baseball, whatever you want. But here, this is what we are going to go for. Of course, they're going to have a bigger contest as the offseason progresses after the NFL draft specifically. But let's go and hop into the big board but super flex. So if you want to get into this draft, this is where you are going to do so. And we got 3 spots open. Okay, so there are going to be 3 spots available. I'm sorry, we only have 3 people in this live stream. So I'd imagine that we are going to be sitting here just for a little bit. But as we sit here, let me send the link out in the live chat. You could also find the link in the description of the video if you're watching this later on and you're wanting to get into drafts with us in the future. If you want to go get into drafts just with some random people in the lobby, please make sure you go through and take advantage of that. And yeah, I can also send a link out over on Locals to make sure that people are ready to go. But please, if you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this live stream, subscribe to the channel, and I guess we can answer some questions while we're sitting here. Okay, so we just sent that out on on Locals. Justin out in the chat, thank you, my man, for coming out. Hope you are going to have a good weekend. And real quick, if y'all don't know about our deal with Underdog Fantasy, please make sure you take advantage of this. If you want to hop into these drafts, they also have player props. I guess I can show you all the player props here while we're waiting just for 1 second. I guess we can also probably go through and talk about Melvin Gordon possibly going over to Baltimore. But yeah, they have player props, golf, baseball. I mean, they're going to have soccer, basketball, essentially whatever you could think of. There's so much on there. And when you make your first deposit on Underdog Fantasy and you use promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And on top of that, with promo code FLOCK, you will get our in-depth Dynasty research book, over 100 pages of quality information to make you a better fantasy player overall, whether it's Dynasty for your leagues up in 2022. And on top of this, you'll get our 2022 rankings, our 2022 Dynasty rankings at the same time. But we're going to be sitting here just for a little bit. There are 8 spots still left. Usually we can fill these like that, but I mean, right now it's 6 a.m. in California. So I guess a bunch of these people that would usually be hopping into these drafts are currently sleeping, but hopefully we can get this filled very soon. We got Noah in the chat. Happy to see you. Alexander says, hey there, opinion on the wide receiver roster of Denver. Is Jerry Jeudy the number 1 option? Yeah, so if you go through and if you look at the split for Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton in Denver, of course, this past season, you were looking at Courtland Sutton as a wide receiver that I will admit, the per game numbers, they look very comparable to Jerry Jeudy. If you just pull up the final season statistics between Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, the gap between these players does not necessarily look that large. Now, what we need to understand is Courtland Sutton was placed into a little bit of a different situation than Jerry Jeudy was this past year. Remember, Jerry Jeudy went down for about 7 games this past season. And Courtland Sutton turned into the alpha wide receiver in that offense because he wasn't competing for targets with Jerry Jeudy. And if you look at the splits with and without Jerry Jeudy on the field, the difference is unbelievable for Courtland Sutton, where while both wide receivers were on the field, if you look at those per game numbers, Jerry Jeudy was the wide receiver 1 in Denver, and it wasn't even close. If you look at fantasy points per game, if you look at targets per game, if you look at receiving yards per game, Jerry Jeudy was lapping Courtland Sutton on a consistent basis, and Courtland Sutton was a wide receiver 7 to 8 from a fantasy football perspective on a points per game basis. Courtland Sutton was legitimately nothing when Jerry Jeudy was healthy this past year. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're looking at Jerry Jeudy in that offense, now, yes, his per game numbers on the final season are similar to Sutton's. It's because Sutton was inflated when Jerry Jeudy was not in that offense. But should we expect that Jerry Jeudy gets injured every single season? Should we expect that Courtland Sutton has half the year to play as the wide receiver 1 in Denver and doesn't have to compete for Jerry Jeudy? Should we expect a 26, 27-year-old Courtland Sutton to all of a sudden become drastically better and way more talented compared to Jerry Jeudy, who's only 22 years old? Which one should we expect to continue to get better? In my opinion, it's not even close. This is not a scenario where Jerry Jeudy is the wide receiver 1A, Courtland Sutton's the wide receiver 1B. No, this is Jerry Jeudy is the wide receiver 1, not even remotely close. Courtland Sutton is a far distant in that offense, closer to players like Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. And I know a lot of people are going to hate that because Courtland Sutton's big. Courtland Sutton's the prototypical Alpha X wide receiver build. However, if you look at the numbers, even going back to when Courtland Sutton was good in fantasy, his best year in 2019, there was no Jerry Jeudy there. There was no KJ Hamler. There's no competition for targets in the slightest. Now, of course, horrendous quarterback play. But even back then, when Courtland Sutton was 23, 24 years old, he was a high-end wide receiver 3 from a per-game basis. Now, he stayed healthy all year. So he hit 1,000 receiving yards. A lot of people like looking at those total numbers and thinking that's how they should be evaluating players, where we shouldn't just be going, oh, he stayed healthy all year, he's fantastic. No, we should be looking at the fact that on a per-game basis, Courtland Sutton at his peak, at his best throughout his entire career, he's about to be 27. His peak was being a high-end wide receiver 3 on a per-game basis from a fantasy football standpoint. Jerry Jeudy's the wide receiver 1 in Denver. I want nothing to do with Courtland Sutton, if we're going to be completely honest. Okay, so Derek says Link is not sending us to the draft. Yes, so the draft right here, we are doing the big board, but super flex. Well, there are only 2 spots left, so I'd imagine these get filled. But yeah, we are going and we are drafting with the league that has the top prize of, I don't even know. I know they have over 300,000 in the prize pool, but if you want to get into this draft, just go to the draft, and it's big board, but super flex. I apologize. Maybe by the time you see this, it's already filled. We only have 1 spot left, but we did this at the very beginning of the live stream. Stalled for a little bit of time. But let me set up a live stream. Let me set up a poll real quick here for the live stream. Okay, so yeah, a lot of people wanting us to send the link. Yeah, you just go to the regular Underdog Fantasy lobby and you just join the big board, but Superflex. We were going to get a Superflex draft going. I know a lot of people have requested this. If you don't know what Superflex is, I don't know if you've been living under a rock, but essentially, not only you're going to have your starting quarterback spot, but because quarterback's the most important position from an NFL standpoint, it would make a lot of sense to make quarterback one of the most important positions in a fantasy football sense. And of course, that's not the case if we are going to be looking at a regular 1 quarterback draft, but this is going to be super flex, so you can have that second quarterback in your starting lineup. So they are going to be significantly more valuable. And yeah, we still have 1 person in this lobby. Noah, get in here. My dude, get in here. Okay, so Vic says, how are you seeing Elijah Moore this year? It's going to be interesting to see what the New York Jets do in the NFL draft. Obviously, with the departure of Jamison Crowder, we can assume that Elijah Moore is going to be playing a more active role in the slot for the New York Jets. However, they still need a boundary wide receiver to pair alongside Corey Davis. It'd make a lot of sense for them to go in the direction of someone like Drake London in the first round, George Pickens if he falls to them in the second round, because you'd imagine that they try to do everything that they can to set up Zach Wilson to have a successful second season, because you can't leave Zach Wilson with any excuses. If he fails again, the Jets need to know that he is not the guy. Very similar to what the Miami Dolphins are doing right now with Tua Tagovailoa, leaving no excuses, going and getting Tyreek Hill for him, saying, hey, we gave you the supporting cast. What else is there to do? So I'm expecting that you possibly have the New York Jets adding another wide receiver in this year's NFL draft. But Elijah Moore, I loved him as a prospect coming out of Ole Miss. I mean, if you're looking at Elijah Moore as a prospect, he goes to Ole Miss, I mean, back in 2018 as a wide receiver that stepped onto campus with DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, and Dawson Knox all on that Ole Miss roster. So, of course, he's not going to be able to produce year one, but going into year two, that's when you have the elite breakout. Elijah Moore has over 800 receiving yards this season. The next best wide receiver in that Ole Miss offense did not crack 200. Then you see his junior season at Ole Miss in the SEC. We got it. We got the 101. Lock in Josh Allen. It would have been difficult for me before the Tyreek Hill trade, but after the Tyreek Hill trade, the pick is easily Josh Allen. But anyway, his junior season, Elijah Moore goes out there and averages 150 receiving yards on a per game basis. He declares early for the NFL draft. He has a decent athletic profile. Athleticism doesn't matter nearly as much for production as NFL wide receiver college prospects. Can't speak today, but very excited about the talent of Elijah Moore. It does suck to see how high other people are on him, because I feel like we're to the point where you can't really say you're getting a value with Elijah Moore. And okay, so let's go through. Let's kind of speculate what we're going to be doing on the 2-3 turn, where you got guys like Derek Carr, Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins. Interesting. Yeah, so we're going Josh Allen here at the 101. I mean, you're going to see that quarterbacks will get soaked up quickly. That's not to say we're going to go quarterback in round 2, as you'll have elite skill positional players available for you on the board. But yeah, we're going to go Josh Allen at the 101. And the reason we're hopping into one of these tournament drafts is I know a lot of y'all are hopping into these as well. I know this is right now the most popular format of a draft on Underdog Fantasy. That's why it's a $10 draft and they have $300,000 in the prize pool, because clearly it's extremely popular. And I think we need to be adjusting our strategy in a draft like this compared to how we would be drafting in just a regular league between, the drafters on this channel. Y'all know when we get those live streams going, we just have a regular 12-team league. You don't need to care about having the highest ceiling possible, because you're not getting to the fantasy football playoff round with 100 other people that you need to outscore for you to bring in the $50,000, the $100,000, whatever first place is. So we have to draft for a stack. Once we take Allen here at the 101, we need to make sure that we're looking for guys like Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis later in this draft, because that would definitely just give us the higher overall ceiling from a week-to-week perspective. But yeah, you have 5 quarterbacks going off the board in a row. Jonathan Taylor finally goes off the 106. I would be interested to know, what do y'all think of the Burrow selection over Jonathan Taylor? I do not see Burrow having the same elite level ceiling that you could have from guys like Lamar, Mahomes, Allen. I honestly would prefer Kyler over Joe Burrow. Of course, Kyler's supporting cast significantly worse than what you have from Joe Burrow's, and I am 100% fine. If you want to make the argument that Joe Burrow is a much better NFL quarterback than Kyler Murray, I'm not going to argue against you with that. But what I would say is, I would say if we've seen Kyler Murray get the double-digit rushing touchdowns previously, if we've seen Kyler Murray be able to get to 500 rushing yards, it doesn't really matter if Joe Burrow is a significantly better NFL quarterback. Based from a fantasy football perspective, Kyler Murray has access to that elite 2019 Lamar Jackson season, 2018 Patrick Mahomes year, where it's much harder to see a prototypical pocket passing option get there. Now, I will say it's not like Joe Burrow is going to be sitting in the pocket like Drew Brees, like Tom Brady. It's not like he has to lead the NFL in passing. But here at the 105, it is a little tough for me. And Gregory says Kyler over Burrow easily. Okay, good. I'm happy to hear I'm not the only one with that stance. But you got Dak Prescott going at the 110, Cooper Kupp at the 111. I will have some strategy I need to get off my chest, but I'm going to wait, because obviously we have a couple people in this live stream, in this draft room right now. I don't want to affect the draft board by anything that I say. I want this to be a very similar board to what you would get in on Underdog Fantasy Reminder, go sign up with promo code FLOCK. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. You'll get our in-depth Dynasty research book, over 100 pages of quality information. You'll get our 2022 rankings. You'll get our 2022 Dynasty rankings. You'll get extra live streams with our premium content on locals, literally with the $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy. That is how much Underdog Fantasy is supporting this channel. So please support Underdog, which in turn supports us. But Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford at the turn here. I like the idea. Obviously, if you're looking at Stafford as a quarterback that does have a really good supporting cast this upcoming season, it's interesting to see Brady going behind here. I want to know what people think they should be doing with Trey Lance at the moment. Of course, I am the world's #1 Trey Lance fan. And from a Dynasty fantasy football perspective, y'all know I've been way too high on Trey Lance for a very long time. Taking me here the first, this definitely seems pretty damn aggressive. Alexander says, should we see a bounce back from Lamar Jackson this upcoming season? Yeah, I love Lamar this upcoming year. I mean, especially with the supporting cast. This is by far and away the best supporting cast Lamar Jackson's ever had. I mean, going from, remember, a couple of years ago, he's throwing balls to Willie Snead. Now he's going to have Rashad Bateman, Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews, presumably all close to their prime. I'm very excited about Lamar. Deshaun Watson goes to the 205. That is an upside pick. This is what we're talking about by chasing that upside. Getting Watson here in the second round paired with Christian McCaffrey. Of course, this team could be the worst team in the league if McCaffrey goes down week 1, if Deshaun Watson sees an 8-game suspension. This team has no shot. But if we're drafting for the highest ceiling possible, if we are looking at a format that's a $10 buy-in that has $300,000 in prizes, you're not going to get first place by making safe selections. It's just not going to happen. You have to go out of your way. You have to swing for the fences with a couple of these picks. I love the idea of going and getting McCaffrey, of going and getting Deshaun Watson, 2 players that we know have access to elite level ceilings. Of course, we didn't have the option to do so, picking Allen at the 101 regardless, but interesting. Zach says, you're the #2 Trey Lance fan. I'm the #1 Trey Lance fan. Exactly why I took him there. I love to see it. I love to see the conviction. Okay, you got Derek Carr at the 209. So it looks like we are not taking a quarterback. I'm not going to be taking a quarterback here at the turn if this is going to be the case. So Derek Carr at the 209. 2 picks before us. Derrick Henry goes at the 210. I guess we kind of just need to lock in Stephon Diggs. Yeah, Travis Kelce goes. Okay, so we're going to take Stephon Diggs here over Devontae Adams. This is a selection I would make regardless of if we had Josh Allen on the roster. And here, I'm going to do something that's a little unique. I understand that if you're looking at our rank, actually, let's go Javonte Williams. With Melvin Gordon looking more and more likely like he is not going to be in Denver, we're going to go Javonte. I was thinking about possibly going with a Joe Mixon selection there. Now, with taking Mixon, why I would have done so is if we were looking at unique combinations of the pairing of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs for this tournament. I would assume because ADP has Javonte Williams a lot closer to the 2-3 turn, then what we would actually find is there are less unique combinations with Joe Mixon, but I do want to get some Javonte Williams exposure when it looks like you are not going to have Melvin Gordon. And if you look at the combined workload for the combination of Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams last season, it was a top 3 running back in fantasy, and we're talking about highest possible ceiling. Now, if I was in a regular league, sure, I could easily see myself going with Najee Harris. Now, the issue is I'm afraid Najee Harris is going to be capped in that Pittsburgh Steelers offense. And if we are chasing the highest ceiling possible, and you ask me, Mason, who has access to a higher ceiling? Javonte with Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos overall offensive environment, or should we be pivoting off and going Najee? I'm probably going to go Javonte Williams if we're going highest ceiling possible. American Spartan says, great pick. Thank you, my man. Thank you. Okay, so Justin Fields goes at the 306. So I agree. If we are going to pass on quarterback in the first round, I would say probably the best way to get one, instead of reaching on a Derek Carr or a Kirk Cousins. And y'all know I've been a Justin Fields hater for a very long time. I hated where he was going last year in drafts, in Dynasty and in redraft, based on the situation he was stepping into and based on the overall fantasy community overrating Justin Fields compared to where the NFL thought that he actually was. Now, I would say the 306 is a fine pick here because Upside, upside, upside. He has the rushing upside. Now, the issue is, how is Chicago going to put a successful supporting cast around him? I personally don't see it. And I am very worried about that with Justin Fields, especially if you look at this team that doesn't have a first round pick this upcoming season. Like, legitimately, where are they going to go? Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb at the 309, the 310. I'm excited to go through and talk about our strategy. I want to get about 10 rounds in, though. I want to get about 10 rounds in. Kyle says, can you do regular drafts at times? I don't think everyone plays Superflex. Yeah, this is our first Superflex draft for 2022 leagues. Of course, if I'm doing a dynasty draft, I'm only doing Superflex. I'm not going to play in a one quarterback dynasty league. But yeah, if you look at all the other drafts on this channel for Underdog, Underdog has their primary contests are still one quarterback. That's what we're mainly focusing in on. But it is fun to get a Superflex going every once in a while. Let's go through. Tua Tagovailoa at the 312. I'm sure the team that took Tyreek Hill at the 309 was possibly wanting Tua. But yeah, you get the Tua and the Jalen Waddle stack here at the 3-4 turn. Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown. I love what Bernie's doing here. Love this. You're going out there and you're getting wide receivers that both have access to be the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy. You're stacking them with their quarterback so you can get that spike week potential, specifically near the end of the season. It's perfect. Trevor Lawrence at the 404. And of course, there is a chance that we just get completely boxed out of the quarterback position, but that's kind of the situation you find yourself in when you're drafting at the turn, when you're drafting at the 101, when you're drafting at the 102, when you're drafting at the 112 or the 111. But as I've said before, we're not drafting to go out there and have a high floor. I'm not drafting to make sure this needs to be my team. It's a $10 draft with $300,000 in the prize pool. We're drafting for the highest ceiling possible. If a quarterback doesn't fall to us, and we burn the $10. So MPA up on the clock. They go Mark Andrews at the 406. Interesting to see Andrews last this far when you had Kelsey going off the board at the 211. And I'm completely fine taking a tight end here. Y'all know at the 4-5 turn, that's where Kyle Pitts was going his rookie season, pretty much every single draft. And I personally was not looking to draft Kyle Pitts at all in that range. This year, it may be a little bit different. When Kyle Pitts not only was the best tight end prospect of all time, when Kyle Pitts also comes out and dominates the target share in Atlanta, when they have no other competition for targets for the Atlanta Falcons right now, I think that they probably should go out there and draft someone like Garrett Wilson in the first round. But still, even if they do that, Kyle Pitts can just see 20+% of his team's targets at the tight end position in particular. Okay, Lucci says, are the Steelers going to go with Mitchell Trubisky or draft one? It seems like literally every single mock draft you look at, they have Kenny Pickett going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would be surprised if Pickett falls to 20. I think a lot of people just want to have that because, oh, Kenny Pickett with the Pitt. Oh, that makes a ton of sense. The Steelers need a quarterback. I don't necessarily think there's that much weight behind it. I would say if Kenny Pickett were to fall there, it would make a lot of sense for him. Okay, so Kamara at the 409. Ooh, Have I not been showing y'all? Actually, no, never mind. I think we're fine. Okay, Fournette goes to the 410. I would be interested in Waller here if it wasn't for Devontae Adams coming in. I think we're just going to go back-to-back top of the ADP list here. We'll talk about... Let me see something. Oh, we are put in a difficult spot. I would love to take Chubb here. You know what? We are going to take Chubb. As I said, there is a very high probability that this draft turns into absolutely nothing. There's a high probability by us going with Swift and Nick Chubb here and passing on a quarterback like Matt Ryan that we are just lighting our $10 on fire. But it's the title of this video. We're going for upside here. Matt Ryan goes to the 503. Completely understand the selection. Here, if I'm drafting for the highest ceiling possible, I think we're going to take Swift and Nick Chubb and see what quarterbacks possibly make it back to us on the 6-7 turn. Very unlikely, though. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Mason, I thought you hated Nick Chubb. Why the hell are we drafting Nick Chubb here? I hated Nick Chubb last year. I hated Nick Chubb when he was going in the first round. But now Nick Chubb will be playing in the best offensive environment that he has ever seen. Combine this with the fact that Nick Chubb is going 4 rounds later. He's going 4 rounds later compared to where he was going last year. He's going 30 picks later. He's in the best situation he's ever seen. Kareem Hunt has no dead money on that contract. It is possible, just possible, that this team looks at Kareem Hunt and decides to move on from him this offseason if they think they can trade him, flip a profit, and just have Dearness Johnson there to play that second role. Y'all know I'm always the person pumping the brakes on Nick Chubb, saying Nick Chubb is one of the best and most talented running backs in the NFL. But at the end of the day, he's in a committee, which made it laughable to draft a committee running back with Baker Mayfield as his starting quarterback at the back half of the first round last year when we were getting Joe Mixon at the back half of the second. But here, if we're taking Nick Chubb at the 4-5 turn, sign me up for it. I think Watson elevates the entire offense. I understand they'll probably be a little less run heavy, but still, I think we can be very excited about it. Okay, so we have Cam Akers at the 5'10". Of course, I have to be completely transparent. At this point, we're just praying to God that running backs go off the draft board. So it's nice seeing Gibson. It's nice seeing Aaron Jones, Breece Hall, Cam Akers go off the board. What we're probably going to have to do is just pray that we get some quarterbacks and wide receivers making it back to us. George Kittle goes at the 5'11". I am sure that Zach would have loved Kittle making it to him at the 5'12", to stack there with Trey Lance, especially when you start with the balanced team of Lance, Tua, and both of the wide receivers. I guess we can talk about my strategy now because we've already kind of implemented it, and it doesn't really matter if things change from here because we're probably not going to be drafting a running back at pick 6 or 7. Now, a big thing is in this draft compared to a regular underdog draft. Y'all know in a regular underdog draft, I am all about wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Here it's a little bit different because when you add in the super flex spot, instead of underdog just adding in super flex on top of the overall starting lineup, what they've done instead is they've removed one of those starting lineup spots where you're no longer starting 3 wide receivers minimum every single week. Indeed, you're only starting 2 wide receivers every single week guaranteed. And that plays a massive role in altering the supply and demand ratio of the position, where you've kind of noticed that a lot of these wide receivers are falling on underdog. Now, of course, I took Stephon Diggs at the 2-3 turn, primarily because we add Josh Allen. And if we're trying to chase that ceiling, we're going to be going for that stack. But if we take a step back and just look at the fact that you don't need to start 3 wide receivers, you can afford to wait longer on them with underdog super flex drafts than you would be able to in a 1 quarterback league. So it kind of plays into our favor. You have a lot of running backs here going off the board. DK Metcalf goes to the 603. With Metcalf, this is someone that's going in the second round of a regular 1 quarterback league. Of course, you have all these quarterbacks going ahead of him, which definitely pushes him down. But DK Metcalf going in the 6th round is the perfect example of how a wide receiver here is going to be valued less than what you would have in the other format. Okay, Mike Williams goes to the 604. This is where I think DK Metcalf honestly should be valued. Y'all know I've been screaming that DK Metcalf has been a player that's been overdrafted for a very long time now. Now, Malik Willis, the target that we had at the 6-7 turn. Of course, the odds that we had Malik Willis making it to us, they were slim. We were about 7 picks away, but if Malik Willis were to make it to us, then that's how you find a draft with the highest ceiling possible. With Malik Willis, he does have that elite rushing upside that we're searching for time and time again. This is a quarterback that averaged over 100 rushing yards a game his junior season. I know technically it was like at 93, but if you look at the fact that colleges actually count sacks for negative rushing yards, if it was NFL scoring, Malik Willis would have gone over 100 rushing yards. Now we got Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson going off the board. So this is exactly what we are worried about. We are getting boxed out of the quarterback position. When we have Allen, we do have access to that stable quarterback 1 every single week that are going to provide us with spikes. So there's a chance that we just platoon our second quarterback spot. I honestly may not even take a quarterback here, depending on what comes around to us. I was really hoping we were getting either Malik Willis or not even Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones ought to have been fine with. I like him as a target, but I was hoping we were going to get Malik Willis or Zach Wilson primarily. Okay, so all these teams have 2 quarterbacks. This is an older roster here. I guess you do have a stack with Derek Carr and Darren Waller. Jerry Jeudy goes to the 608 after we talk about Jerry Jeudy a ton at the beginning of the video. I love the Deontay Johnson pick. I have a video coming out, I believe, this upcoming week, talking about why I think Deontay Johnson is currently such a good value in these drafts. Pittman goes to the 610. I think this is the team that took Matt Ryan. Yeah, this is the team that took Matt Ryan previously. That was their first wide receiver off the board. This team here does not have a wide receiver yet. You could easily see them going with DJ Moore, and Chris Godwin is significantly more valuable in this format than he would be in those regular 12-team leagues. Okay, so Michael Thomas goes. I guess we're having to draft Carson Wentz, and if we're going to take Carson Wentz here, y'all know, if you look at my wide receiver rankings, of course, I'm not going to have Terry McLaurin ranked ahead of DJ Moore. I'm not going to have him ranked ahead of Chris Godwin. Y'all know I've been the resident Terry McLaurin hater for a very long time. But when we select Carson Wentz here, we're essentially making a bet that the Washington football offense is football's team, Washington Commanders, whatever the hell you want to call them, is going to be significantly better than projected this upcoming season. And if that's going to be the case, you kind of need to double down here on a player like Terry McLaurin, specifically just for the stack. So yeah, I don't love Washington, but like I said, we boxed ourselves out of the quarterback position. And if we were looking at the difference, in my opinion, from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan, I don't think there's that large of a gap. Like, I think the gap between Nick Chubb and J.K. Dobbins is going to be significantly larger than what we saw with Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan. So I know, y'all know I'm the first person to say, oh, I'm an idiot. This is what I did wrong. This is how we improve for next time. I think the strategy that we implemented, waiting for the potential of getting Malik Willis or Zach Wilson falling to us at the 6-7 turn, even with it not working out, us just circling around and going with Carson Wentz in the 6th and stacking him with his top wide receiver, I think that was the optimal play. Of course, it would have been a lot better if we got lucky and Malik Willis ended up making it back to us at that 6-7 turn. But still, I think the optimal play was to go Javonte, DeAndre Swift, and Nick Chubb there before you had the running back run occur. Okay, so Gregory says Carson Wentz over Jameis Winston. Yeah, I think they are very, very similar to me. I'm going to go Carson Wentz. Honestly, I don't want to use the cop-out saying, oh, I just did it for the stack. I probably would have gone Carson Wentz over Jameis Winston as well, even if you had Michael Thomas making it back to us at the 6-7 turn. My issue with Jameis is not the player himself. I mean, if you go back to Jameis Winston 2018, 2019, horrible NFL quarterback, but from a fantasy football perspective, obviously, Jameis Winston is one of the most exciting options you could look at because he's that DGAF Ryan Fitzmagic quarterback that's just going to be chunking the ball down the field 20 plus yards. And yeah, it's going to generate turnovers, but it's also going to generate a ton of fantasy points. The issue with Jameis in New Orleans specifically is we saw last year, this coaching staff, I know, new head coach, yada, 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 but there are still a ton of guys on that staff that remain the same. They turned Jameis Winston into a game managing quarterback. And I just don't like that idea. I guess what you could say about Winston is this is a team that also has the optionality to go with a couple rookie wide receivers in the first round. They could end up getting someone like Jameson Williams. They could end up getting someone like Chris Olave when they have 2 first-round picks in the middle there. Okay, Kadarius Toney at the 801. I know Zach's in here. Interesting to see Kadarius Toney. Who else was on the board? Kadarius Toney over Elijah Moore. Kadarius Toney over Devonta Smith. Over Ahmad-Ra St. Brown. Oh, I hate that Kadarius Toney selection. I know Zach here goes and takes his guy. He had Trey Lance there in the first. But I can't get behind Kadarius Toney. I definitely prefer Elijah Moore over a lot of these guys. I think that Courtland Sutton selection, I hate the Sutton pick. I've talked about Courtland Sutton being overvalued for a very long time now. I think I prefer Elijah Moore over really all 3 of these guys that win the past 3 picks. I probably prefer him over Juju as well. Zach says big upside. Big reach. I'll see the Kadarius Toney upside play. I don't think from a season-long perspective he has access to the elite level ceiling, but what you could see from Kadarius Toney is access to spike weeks, specifically in that best ball playoff tournament at the end. Like if we're looking at Kadarius Toney, this is easily a player that we've seen already before. We only had him healthy like 6 weeks this past season, but in one of those weeks he went for 189 receiving yards. So I get the play from a week-to-week standpoint. I think it's going to be highly volatile and have a lot of upside. But taking him ahead of Elijah Moore, that looks tough. Okay. Ty says, Amon-Ra St. Brown all day. With St. Brown, he's going to be slightly less valuable in this format because it's going to be half PPR instead of full PPR. Okay, Dalton Schultz at the 807. Okay, so let's pull this up. Yeah, there are quarterbacks available, but how's Marcus Mariota getting drafted here? Brandon Cooks at the 810. I'm assuming one goes with the wide receiver. He's 3 running backs, 2 quarterbacks, a tight end. He has the Mahomes and Kelsey stack. Come on. Hell yes. Hell yes. This was best case scenario. Okay, I think that this team actually, I honestly think we crushed this draft. I know it's boring. We're going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. As I said, yes, slightly less valuable in this format. Not going to have a ton of touchdown upside. And at the same time, I mean, just him being able to rack up receptions is not going to be as valuable in the half PPR format. But to get the stack here with Goff, now we're going to have the stack with Goff, DeAndre Swift, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh my God. I think we did a very fine job in this draft. Looking back, mistakes that we could have potentially made. Like I said, I think the decision point here, everything was very standard. I think first, second, third round, we didn't really have that many options of where we could go. This 5th round selection of Nick Chubb, this is the pivotal point of this draft where you could easily make the argument that we needed to go with the quarterback here, whether that was Matt Ryan, Mac Jones. But I think passing on the position, looking at ADP with the small hope, the small chance Malik Willis would have made it back to us, I think that was the right call. And when that did not happen, we still fixed the draft somehow by going out and getting the Washington stack and completing our Detroit Lions stack at the same time. So I understand. Yes, 100%. What we need to be doing every single draft is look back and go, what did I do wrong? How can I improve? And I make horrible selections in every single draft. I'm probably going to make some mistakes going forward from here. But to be honest, I think we've killed this draft. I don't know if I would change anything. Of course, I would change what my league mates did, letting us get players a little bit later, but obviously we have no control over that. Okay, so Marcus Mariota goes at the 905. Completely fine seeing quarterbacks go off the board at this point. I guess we could take a late round shot on like Kenny Pickett, depending on where he ends up going. Okay, Jacob says, hey, Flock, I'm in a keeper league where I get to keep a one player from the previous season. Should I keep DeAndre Swift or Tyreek Hill? It's going to matter the starting lineup requirements and the keeper cost that you have associated with each player. I mean, if you only have to start 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex, probably would go DeAndre Swift. However, if you have to start 3 wide receivers and double flex, that's going to be a slight premium for the wide receiver position. There, I'd probably go Tyreek Hill. Yeah. Hunter Renfrow, Tony Pollard at the 909, the 910. At this point, yeah, you only need to start 2 wide receivers every single week in this format, but we still probably want to build on our wide receiver depth. I'm completely fine continuing to pass on the tight end position. Very interesting to see Rob Gronkowski go here at the 908. This is significantly ahead of his ADP. Drake London at the 912, Brandon Ayuk at the 1001. Love both selections by Zach. You're definitely a lot better than what we had with the Kadarius Toney pick. I mean, I think that if we're talking ceiling, you probably have a higher ceiling from both. I don't want to say both, but definitely Drake London. Drake London just looks like an elite level prospect. Rashad Penny goes at the 1002. Okay, scroll this down a bit. Interesting to see this Hawkinson value as well. Dawson Knox at the 1003. I would have liked that Dawson Knox pick making it back to us at the 1011 turn, obviously, when we have Josh Allen. I think this is early for Dawson Knox, if we're going to be completely honest. The issue with Knox is it does seem similar to Robert Tonyan. Now, with Robert Tonyan back in 2020, obviously last year Tonyan was the easiest avoid in all of fantasy football. And if anybody told you differently, I don't know what numbers they look at. I don't know how they evaluate players. But if you're looking at his touchdown rate, he scored a touchdown on every 6 targets. Like, there was no way that was going to sustain. Now, Dawson Knox's touchdown rate was not that high, but it was reminiscent of that Robert Tonyan season. And on top of this, with Dawson Knox, the addition of OJ Howard, I don't know if I'm just being unreasonable here. I view OJ Howard still as a tight end with a lot of upside. I mean, this is someone that if you would have asked me back in that 2017 draft when he was coming out of Alabama, Mason, what ends up happening with OJ Howard? I would have told you, oh, OJ Howard, he'll be a top 3 tight end in the NFL. Just give him a couple of years. Like, People were hyping up OJ Howard, not to the same extreme as Kyle Pitts. Of course, Kyle Pitts is the best tight end prospect of all time. But OJ Howard, David Njoku were getting an immense amount of hype. I was definitely on the hype train for both tight ends. They were elite level prospects. Chris Olave goes at the 10:08. Liam says, what do you make of the rumors of Melvin Gordon in discussion with the Ravens? I definitely think it's a possibility, and I think that's a big reason on why we decided to go in the direction. Okay, wait 1 second here. We went 3 running backs early. You know what? With the assumption, like, I like the idea of maybe taking Hunt here and telling ourselves a story saying, oh, what if Kareem Hunt ends up getting traded to the Houston Texans? And that's how all of a sudden Kareem Hunt has an immense amount of value, as well as unlocking Nick Chubb to that elite level ceiling. I don't know if we're just trying to sell ourselves in something that has no real chance of happening. I'm going to queue up Claypool here, definitely as one of our selections. We just need a wide receiver. If we would have had one of those rookies making it back to us, that would have been preferable, but we need a wide receiver that has access to those spike weeks. Not worried as much about receiver here as I would be in a league where we have to start 3 of them like a regular underdog draft, but since this is super flex, it's not going to be as big of a deal. Okay, so go Claypool to 10-12. I'm going to talk myself into it. Of course, when we're drafting a team in this format in particular, we have to tell ourselves a story on how this team gets to be the very top and have access to that first place prize when there's a $300,000 prize pool. I think we can possibly tell ourselves a story of Kareem Hunt getting traded from Cleveland, in that accessing the elite level ceiling for both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb on the same roster. We're going to tell ourselves that story. Maybe it's a pipe dream. Maybe we are just trying to find any reason to take a player that I really like in Kareem Hunt. Y'all know we were drafting him aggressively last year. But let me know what y'all are thinking. Okay. Damien says, I drafted Michael Pittman over Terry McLaurin, and I have Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor already. Feeling good about it as of now. I'm not a big fan of Michael Pittman, but I completely agree. If you add Matt Ryan, if you add Jonathan Taylor, I might as well go for it. Okay, so Gallup at the 11:06. At this point, we need running backs off the board. Like, the last thing we want to see is when we get back up on the clock for there to be 5 running backs sitting there waiting for us. Once we go with Kareem Hunt, we lock our 4th running back into this roster, especially when we've taken them so early and invested so much capital into them. It'd be a very bad idea for us to just continuously hammer in on these running backs. And real quick, if you have not done so already, let me remind you, the number one way, and it's not even remotely close, the number one way you can support this channel is going to Underdog Fantasy. You can find the link in the description. You can find the link in the live chat as well. Signing up with promo code FLOCK. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You will get our 2022 rankings, our 2022 Dynasty rankings. You will get our Dynasty Research book, a $30 value, probably valued more than that, but we're selling it for $30 on flockfantasy.com. But you will get over 100 pages of quality information on that. And it's free for you. They're matching your deposit, and it supports this channel so much. So please go take advantage of that. Go to the link in the description. Sign up for Underdog Fantasy. We're going to be doing these live streams every single week. This week, upcoming week, we're probably going to have to take 9 days off because I will be traveling. But as soon as we're back, we'll be firing these up again. Okay, Ramondre Stevenson at the 11:10. Okay, good. Get these running backs off. Get them off. We want nothing to do with them. Miles Sanders, gone. Hell yeah. Perfect. I wonder if Baker ends up making it to the 12-13 turn, would we have been better off passing on Goff, going with Garrett Wilson, or going with Drake London, and then potentially getting Baker at the 12-13 turn, or also Jimmy Garoppolo? Definitely a possibility. Russell Gage at the 11-12. The issue with Baker and Jimmy G is if you were to see those teams, their teams trade them to a spot that's going to bring in a rookie quarterback that's going to take over for the second half of the season, all of a sudden they just have absolutely no value because we need our players scoring points in this format in the fantasy football playoffs. We need them weeks 14, 15, 16, 17. Probably actually just 15, 16, 17, but you get the point. Okay, so Jameson Williams at the 12:01. I would have 100% taken Jameson Williams if he made it back to us at the end of the 12th. Williams is a perfect example of a player in a regular format you're not interested in taking because this is a wide receiver that is currently injured, is not going to be seeing the field for a very long time, will miss rookie mini camp, at the same time will miss training camp, will miss the preseason, and probably going to miss the beginning part of the year and start slow in fantasy. In a regular league, that's not what you're looking for. On top of this, he is a speed option. He's a field stretching option that's not going to command consistent volume wherever he lands. He will be a 100% beneficial wide receiver to his NFL offense based on the speed, allowing other guys underneath to get targets. But with Jameson Williams, him in particular, I do think this is a scenario where he's perfect for this format. Because if you tell yourself, how does Jameson Williams get to that elite level ceiling? Okay, well, he needs to get healthy at the beginning part of the season, probably not going to be scoring then. But if he does become an every down player, which he probably will, he's going to be a first round NFL draft pick, and all of a sudden he has access to elite level spike weeks based on being that field stretching wide receiver, very similar to a Deshaun Jackson, particularly at the end of the season when we're in that best ball tournament. It's the exact kind of guy you're looking for here in the 12th round. Love that pick of Jameson Williams. Love the pick of Robert Woods as well. Obviously, Woods dealing with that injury, but I mean, at the same time, this is someone that we're drafting for the end of the season here at this point. Drafting for that upside. Okay, so now, I'm excited. Marquez Valdes-Scantling at the 12:09. I would have been interested in getting Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Isaiah Spiller has just been falling like a rock in these drafts. Probably going to reach on a player as well here. Kenny Golladay goes to the 12-10. I like the Golladay selection. I mean, if you look at Kenny Golladay with the air yards he had last year, I think Kenny Golladay was just set up to fail in a horrible New York Giants offense, very similar to Saquon Barkley, and should be seeing a bounce back sometime soon. Tyler Boyd goes to the 12-11. Tyler Boyd would have 100% been my selection here. I think instead we probably go down a bit, and we're going to continue to build out this stack. We have the Detroit Lions stack with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with DeAndre Swift, with Jared Goff. If somehow, some way, in a land far away, I don't know how it would happen, but if the Detroit Lions became an above average NFL offense, we're not looking for them to be the Chiefs, but if they become an above average NFL offense based on the pieces we have here, I think that is a selection we probably have to make. I like the tight ends we'd have access to later on, but there is a tight end that's going to be one of my most owned players this upcoming season. That is going to be Cole Kmet. Y'all know I'm not a big fan of the Chicago Bears offense, but if you do think Justin Fields is going to succeed, if you are a fan of the Chicago Bears offense, you should be aggressively targeting Cole Kmet everywhere you can. This is a player that if you're looking at his per game production last year, not necessarily fantastic. This is someone that just did not score a single touchdown the entire season. A total of 0 touchdowns scored from Cole Kmet. But what is the most volatile statistic in fantasy football? That is going to be touchdown rate, especially for a 22-year-old tight end. Cole Kmet currently younger than Pat Freiermuth. Cole Kmet had, I believe, a target share close to 18% this past season. Keep in mind, off the top of my head, I could be wrong here. But he had a very high target share, which we know is sticky season to season. He's younger than Pat Freiermuth. He will 100% continue to improve. You won't have Jimmy Graham being that red zone option for the Chicago Bears this upcoming season. That will be Cole Kmet instead. And right now, his target competition is Darnell Mooney. I know Darnell Mooney has his fans. Yes, Darnell Mooney is the wide receiver one on this team. Daz Newsome, Equanimeous St. Brown. That is who Cole Kmet is competing for with targets. Cole Kmet can be bad. It doesn't even matter. The amount of routes he's going to be running, the fact that the Chicago Bears have to throw the ball. I'm not expecting this to be a good offense at all. I think Chicago will be a bottom 10 offense this upcoming season. But Chicago can easily be a bottom 10 offense and still support Cole Kmet, no problem, just because they have no other weapons and they can't go wide receiver round one because they went out there and traded the pick. Yeah, I actually love the idea of taking Cole Kmet here at the 13:01. We needed a tight end. I would have liked to see Tyler Boyd, Kenny Golladay, Marquez Valdes-Scantling fall. I really love those selections that those teams made right before us. I do prefer them in a vacuum over DJ Chark. The issue is when we have Goff, when we have Amon-Ra St. Brown, when we have DeAndre Swift, we're already kind of going all in on this offense. Zach says someone took Irv. Yeah, Irv Smith Jr. is also a player that I like equally as much as Cole Kmet. I think that they will both be my most drafted players, probably not even at the tight end position, probably in all of fantasy football this upcoming season. Now, when I do have the option to go with Cole Kmet because his ADP is about a round ahead of Irv Smith Jr., I probably will be drafting Cole Kmet, even though they are about the same for me. But with Irv Smith Jr., last time we saw him in Minnesota, that was a team that had Kyle Rudolph. That was a team that had Tyler Conklin on the same roster. Irv Smith Jr. was the co-tight end one there. I mean, at 22 years old in that offense, Irv Smith Jr. himself is 3 months older than Pat Freiermuth. Like, I love the idea of just loading up on Irv Smith Jr., on Cole Kmet, almost everywhere we can. Now, Keel Herbert goes to the 13-12, premium handcuff running back. Interesting to see Darnold go at the 13-08. Because if Darnold is indeed the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers this upcoming season, like if Darnold starts 16 games this upcoming year, Darnold is undoubtedly the best pick in this draft. Because what's the difference between Darnold and Jared Goff? We took Jared Goff in the 901, and I was happy to make that selection. Reality, is there that much of a difference between Darnold and Carson Wentz, who took 6 rounds previously? Now, of course, we don't know if Darnold is going to be the starting quarterback all year, but where else is Carolina going to go? Joshua says, what about Robert Tonyan? How are you feeling now that Davante Adams is gone? I 100% would be more willing to draft Robert Tonyan this upcoming season than I was last year. Robert Tonyan, I do not know if I drafted him in a single league last year. He was egregiously overvalued. It was laughable based on his touchdown rate. But now there are targets available in that offense. The best red zone option in the NFL has moved from Green Bay over to Las Vegas. So I can completely understand, I can completely get behind going and drafting Robert Tonyan at a quarter of the price that he cost last season. So I will be drafting Robert Tonyan, probably some this year. I don't think he's a talented player. Never really thought he was a talented player, but you don't have to be a talented player to be a good pick when you're going this late. And it's so crazy to see Isaiah Spiller going behind David Njoku, going behind Robert Tonyan here. At some point, Isaiah Spiller has to be evaluated. I think probably in the 13th round. This is about where it is. Like I said, once we take Kareem Hunt at the 11:01, we lock ourselves into really not being able to take another running back. We had 4 on the team as is, 0 tight ends. We had 3 wide receivers, I believe. Kind of had to go with the wide receiver position. Love the George Pickens selection at the 14:03. From a dynasty fantasy football perspective, a lot of people are way too high on George Pickens, and yes, drool over that upside, but here, this is where he should be going. If you ever hear anybody compare him, if you see someone rank him over Chris Olave, oh my God, I'd probably stop listening to that person. But if you're getting George Pickens here at 14:03 in a best ball format, Chris Olave going at the 10:08, hell yes, this is where you're drafting George Pickens. This is where George Pickens is a value. I can completely get behind that. Okay. So Drew Lock, Matt Corral. Matt Corral, just falling like a rock if you're looking at NFL mock drafts right now. Like Matt Corral looks like he's going to be going next to Sam Howell in NFL mock draft. In the NFL draft. Okay, so Nyheim Hines goes to the 14:09. I like the Nyheim Hines selection. I would never draft Nyheim Hines in a regular fantasy football league, but in a best ball format in particular, that is where he has value. Okay, so the 2 teams before us, I have no idea where they're going to go. They're both built with 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 5 wide receivers. Okay, so they end up letting Corey Davis fall to us. I'm 100% taking Corey Davis here. As I discussed at the beginning of the live stream, definitely possible that the New York Jets go Drake London round 1, George Pickens round 2, which obviously would really hurt Corey Davis. But I guess we're going to go Davis, and also just as a default, we kind of need a second tight end. We are going and building around stacks, as y'all know, I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk about. We have Carson Wentz. We have Terry McLaurin. So we're going to go Corey Davis and Logan Thomas here. Oh my God. We have freaking... I know people aren't going to agree with us. I know a lot of times we make some horrible selections. I think we've done literally the best job possible. Maybe you prefer Najee Harris. Maybe you prefer Joe Mixon over one of these players. But of course, it's more about the build rather than the players themselves. So if we're going to go through and look at this, Allen, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff at quarterback in a super flex format. But what's most exciting, Allen stacked with Stephon Diggs. Carson Wentz stacked with Terry McLaurin. Stacked with Logan Thomas down here. Jared Goff stacked with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff stacked with DeAndre Swift. Jared Goff stacked with DJ Chark. And what is nice about this is we did not reach on a single one of these players. I think our biggest reach was taking DJ Chark over Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard had an ADP of like 10 picks ahead of DJ Chark. But outside of that, we were just taking top of the ADP list, pieces that fit into our build, pieces that fit into the story that we are telling, that we have the elite level ceiling. Oh my gosh. Okay, Christian Watson of the 1504. Love that Christian Watson selection. I mean, Christian Watson right now has a chance of going to the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a strong argument to be made that we should have gone Christian Watson over Corey Davis. Damian says, any chance we trade Jimmy Garoppolo before OTAs? I'm a Niners fan, and I honestly think he needs to go. With how much I have invested into Trey Lance on my own teams, with my reputation as well, if Jimmy Garoppolo is not traded and Jimmy Garoppolo starts over Trey Lance this upcoming season, I simply have no idea what I would do. I would probably have to delete my YouTube channel, probably have to move to Alaska, buy a cabin in the middle of nowhere and go into hiding. Like, that is how invested I am into Trey Lance. That is how it looks like I've led so many people down the wrong path at this point, even though Lance is literally more expensive this offseason than he was last offseason when we were drafting him. Donovan Peoples-Jones going at the 15-11. Why is Donovan Peoples-Jones going this late? I didn't like his ADP last offseason. But with Donovan Peoples-Jones, he now has a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. There's no Jarvis Landry on this roster. There is no Odell Beckham Jr. on this roster. So hear me out. Donovan Peoples-Jones went from Baker Mayfield, presumably a bottom five quarterback in the NFL. He went from Baker Mayfield, bottom 5 quarterback option, and he was the 3rd wide receiver on his team, behind Odell Beckham Jr., and at the same time, behind Jarvis Landry. Now, the wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 2 are both off that team. Donovan Peoples-Jones is now the wide receiver 1 in Cleveland. And he goes from Baker Mayfield to Deshaun Watson. And he was being drafted about in the 15th round last year. Of course, 1 quarterback formats, but still, I mean, actually, it doesn't even matter Superflex versus 1 quarterback, because pretty much all starting quarterbacks were drafted anyway in a 1 quarterback league by this point. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 15-11, great value. I like James Washington here as well. I actually really like the fact that we went with running backs earlier and we were able to look at this wide receiver value, making it to the 15th, 16th, 17th round. Yeah, love that Donovan Peoples-Jones pick. Oh, Ryan says, did you forget about Amari Cooper? Yes, I 100% forgot about Amari Cooper when I was talking through that. Donovan Peoples-Jones, the 2nd wide receiver on that team. I apologize. Kenyon Drake at the 1605, still a ton of guaranteed money on that contract. Premium handcuff running back in Las Vegas. How many RBs do we have on our build? We have 4. Okay, so 3 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 6 wide receivers, double tight end. We're probably done drafting tight end. This is going to be a slimmer build in general. All of these rookie running backs have so many red flags. Like, these rookie running backs are horrendous. Let's see. Weird Frank on the clock. He goes Jarvis. I would have taken Jarvis Landry if he let him fall. We definitely need another wide receiver. I think we need 1 more running back. Definitely another wide receiver. And I am getting my phone blowing up. I really have to go after this selection. I apologize. It's my grandpa's birthday, and I'm going and traveling to see him. And yeah, I needed to go like 30 minutes ago. So I'm going to have to make this selection and then hop off the live stream. I apologize about that. We're going to go Brian Robinson. I don't really care for him, but he's 18 picks behind ADP. It is what it is. Kind of just got to take him at this point. And also at wide receiver, as we were saying, if we were not caring about upside, particularly at the end of the season, I would not be drafting him here, because if you look at the timeline for his injury, he is going to miss probably the first half of the year. But it is what it is. We're going to go Odell Beckham Jr., pick 193. We're looking for players that have the elite level spike. And of course, for a best ball format, you are going to have roster construction mattering so much, which is why I apologize that we have to go right now and I can't talk through my thoughts on roster construction. But looking at what we have 5 running backs, and with the early investment we made into that running back position, we're most likely done at the running back spot. We're most likely going to just hammer wide receiver over the next 3 rounds. Potentially, we go and grab another tight end. We grab another. We're definitely drafting 2 more wide receivers minimum, and we're going to leave that last option as just flexibility depending on where value falls to us. But yeah, I really have to go. I'm going to be drafting from my phone for the rest of this draft. Of course, thank you all so much for checking out the live stream. I hope that you get into a live stream with us sometime soon. Please go down there, drop a like, go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. And that should be it. I hope you have a great day and hope we get to see you out with the video. I think we have one on Monday.